Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Deborah Tavares. But before I bring her on, I want to thank Delete Me, which is made by Abine, a Boston-based privacy company led by consumer protection, privacy, and identity theft experts. They are passionate about making easy-to-use privacy solutions for everyday people. They strongly believe that the solutions must improve as online privacy becomes more difficult to get. They are a hands-free subscription service that removes customers' personal and private information from the leading people, search, and data broker websites online. They submit opt-outs on behalf of subscribers to have these websites taken down their personal information that is on display for the public. Just click that link in the description and check out what they can do for you. Also, right now, if you did make a donation for our relocation and new studio and everything we have going that we're going to be moving to Colorado for, if you donate $10 or more, you're going to get 3 months free to our premium video site. And any donation over 25 or more, you're going to get a copy of Cory Hughes' upcoming book about the assassination of JFK. Now, I want to thank also all those who have already donated. We appreciate it so much. And the last announcement, we all know YouTube is deleting channels like mine more and more every day, every week. Check out LBRY or library.com. We are on there. All the shows are on there already. It's completely free to sign up. We're going to be also moving all live streams to Dlive, so please subscribe there. And we're always available on all the popular podcast platforms. So Forbidden Knowledge News will be here. It's just, I think our days may be numbered here on YouTube. Now, today, I want to welcome back to the show Deborah Tavares. She is a third-generation land developer of residential construction and has been self-employed in a family-operated business for over 30 years. She has specialized in land feasibility studies, acquisitions, and building permit processes, including required environmental impact reports, along with the furnishing Department of Real Estate subdivision requirements and the entire construction build out to completion. It was during this process that the restrictions of property rights became evident under the creeping constraints of the United Nations Agenda 21 through land use limitations, restrictions, regulations, fees, and increased liability exposures. She exposes the connections between global trends of man-made corporate military controlled technologies and weaponized frequencies and other programs intended to cause damage to health and reduce the population and eliminate our freedom. Deborah, welcome back. How are you today?
Well, Chris, thank you so much. I think we're all wheeling from a variety of weaponized weather assaults right now. I know in your basic geographical location, you're dealing with the ongoing Zeta, Z-E-T-A hurricane that has breached levees, as I'm understanding here. Correct. In California. We too have had just back-to-back fires, severe smoke conditions, certainly injuring our health. And we've had so many blackouts that I can hardly see the light anymore. And we're going to talk about a number of facts today. And the discussion is not intended to scare people. While you will hear things that can be scary, I want in your minds to consider your workarounds. How are you going to survive these attacks? Because it does not matter who wins these elections. We have all lost.
Right.
And we are...
I just wanted to say, before you go any further, you mentioned the elections. I know that's where we're going to start. And I just want to say something before you get started, because I know you have a lot of information to present.
So did we not just start, or are you going to?
Oh, no, we're started. I just wanted to make a comment before you get into it about the elections, that I believe that many people are looking towards one of these what I call puppets to actually make a difference and actually change things and make things better. And people are hoping that an election is going to fix everything. And I know for a fact that it is not, that there's already a selection made and the plan is going to be in motion, and it won't be up to any politician or leader to save us. It's only up to us, I believe. And I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
Well, that's absolutely true. As I was saying, Chris, it doesn't matter who wins. We've all lost. and we are really on our own, as you had said. And no one is coming to save us. So with that in mind, as I roll out information, I want everybody that's listening to this to consider what your options are and to consider them quickly and start hardening up, and I'll go over some opportunities around that as well, Chris. So I want to bring people back to the understanding and the platform in which we are going to go forward today, and that's that we are in a corporate government system, and all of our federal and state governments are not real under the illusion that we have representation. That does not exist that way. What we have are agencies, a network of privately owned corporations called governments, and they're all agencies. Even our judges, thinking about the newly appointed Supreme Court judge, they're all privately employed administrators called judges, and the law is nothing more than their corporate regulations called statutes. And the laws have been created by these government agency corporations. They're all private corporation regulations, and they're called public law, statutes, codes, and ordinances to conceal their true nature. And when you look at Senate Report 93549 that I refer to often, and the reason that I'm spending a little time on this right now is just to underscore that these elections are just a sideshow. In fact, this is the elite's political stage to just laugh at us, essentially. This is just an agenda. The politics is an agenda. And when we look at Senate Report 93549, the American Powers Statutes, it's important to understand that in order to maintain the dictatorial, remember this word, dictatorial control and authorization of the many divisions, the agencies of the executive branch, the sitting president must formally declare a national emergency every single year. And every sitting president has done that. Just going back to Obama, who officially extended the national emergency in 2012 and 2013. And of course, the same has been done by Trump. And this has been an ongoing ritual since 1933. According to Senate Report 93549, once the emergency is declared, all common law is abolished. The Constitution has been abolished. And we fall under the absolute will of government or public policy. And we're under a system of public policy or war powers. And all the governments and corporate agencies need to continue with this plot against all of us is to have public opinion on their side. If public opinion can be kept in sufficient degrees on the side of the corporate government illusion, statutes, laws, and regulations and executive orders can continue to be passed. The Constitution has had no meaning. The Constitution was long ago suspended. So I want to bring us back to some of the most recent executive orders, and then we're going to go over some news. And it's important to remember that the current CEO of USA Inc., that's how you have to think about it, that would be Trump, brought in a number of executive orders. First of all, and not necessarily in this order, the expeditious rollout of broadband, aka 5G, across the United States. And what was brought to our attention recently out of Nashville, Tennessee, was the deployment of 5G. Now, I covered on a separate video about 5G and what we discovered with photographs that some of our investigative traveling reporters sent to us, is that on these 5G boxes, there was a word that we had never ever seen before. And where we tracked this box was through Israel, technology through Israel. The United States is paying Israel billions and billions of dollars to track us here in the United States. And so I want to bring that to everyone's attention. I also found it very interesting that the last presumably presidential debate was held in Nashville. And it was just a few weeks prior to that debate that these 5G boxes were being deployed in the downtown area. And that, of course, would be for mind control and control of the citizenry there as well. But we must understand what we face. And
now, Deborah,
I'm going to,
before you go on from the 5G, you said it would be used for mind control. Is there any documentation or anything that we have that can kind of elaborate that and kind of substantiate that?
well, 5G and all of the frequencies are certainly used for mind control. And I have so many documents up on our resource document tab on stopthecrime.net. And I have many, many testimonies of targeted individuals who have been assaulted physically and mentally. And I recently did some videos with that are a compilation of what Dr. Carol Rosen said, along with what Tesla said about mind control. So I would refer everybody to these in-depth discussions about frequencies, because microwave radiation frequencies and Wi-Fi mind control also is many symptoms as well. And we discussed that, how many of the frequency symptoms are COVID symptoms. And we've discussed in the past how just months before the hellacious presumed COVID pandemic broke out in New York, there was a massive rollout of 5G in the lower income areas. And those are the areas that are being harder hit, presumably also by COVID. We're finding the same thing here in Sonoma County. They're really targeting the Latinx, the Latin community. That's our labor force, those that certainly do all of our farm harvesting from the vineyards, because we're in the wine country, to farming as well. And they're being massively attacked and not able to sustain themselves in multiple generational single family households because of the COVID health orders. There are too many people in one single house. That's just not where I necessarily wanted to start, Chris, but I'm going to throw that in because our Black and Hispanic communities are under direct assault right now. And
Right.
we must all do everything we can to alert them, to beware of the contact tracing teams that are going to be deployed strongly in those areas. There's a contact tracing team here called On the Move, and it is a grant funded contact tracing team. And when you follow the money, you find that these are financed by those that are looking to dominate the world and reduce the population. We also, some time back, discovered there's another contact tracing team called CORE, C-O-R-E, and there are many, but this is just an example. And this CORE stands for Community Organized Relief Effort. And what is very interesting about CORE is the chairman of the board is Sean Penn, Madonna's ex-husband. So we have infiltrators from all angles, and this is what is happening, and we are being literally collapsed. We're in the midst of a collapse, a massive collapse, not even in the midst. I would say that we're pretty well gone. It's just that people have not had an opportunity to surveil the degree of the damage, because every day we're being pummeled by the assault of weather weapons. We're being pummeled by the disinformation of the media on all levels. In fact, there's a very concerted effort, as you said, Chris, to shut down all alternative views. If they don't align themselves with the obedience requirement of the state, then we're going to be shut down, and we are. So let's talk about a few things that we're going to be facing, and we are facing now, and then we're going to get into some news events. So we have to understand where we are heading. And all of our individual liberties are really gone now, particularly with COVID and the lockdowns. All of our prosperity is gone. It's sad to see the young people graduating from college or having dreams and ambitions and benchmarking their success on the success of their parents. Sadly, those days are over for the majority of the younger populations, I'm sad to say. Privacy is gone. We're in a surveillance system, not only from high-tech surveillance devices, but also surveilling our very thoughts, swiping our memories, and replacing our memories with new memories, and creating assassins out of us. This is the level of control. We can see now that our property rights are gone. They always have been, ever since the bankruptcy in 1933, and we were collateralized everything by the IMF and the international bankers. And all freedom to travel is now being eliminated. We're going to be confined very soon within our city growth boundaries. You will not be able to travel. Many areas right now have implemented severe travel fines and restrictions. We're seeing Slovakia, for example, certainly Australia, Ireland, many locations where there's limited travel, just a matter of maybe 5 miles circumference around your home. In some locations, if you are out of your travel range and you don't have essential business requirements, you're being fined over $3,000 and 6 months in jail. So our freedom to travel is being eliminated. Certainly all of the petroleum that we need to drive our cars is being eliminated. Many of you may have heard Gavin Newsom announce here in California a few weeks ago that by the year 2035, there would be no new car production or new car sales that were based on the need for petroleum products. All petroleum-based products are going to be eliminated. So as you hear me say this, I would like for all of you to think workarounds on how you're going to survive with this being taken from you. We're talking about diesel, gasoline, propane. You must consider workarounds. You must. And I'll have more specific ideas as we move forward. We certainly just recently discussed what force majeure means. I found that in a bank statement, and the reason to look at all of your inserts in all of your statements and bills. I would have never known about force majeure. I have a YouTube up on that, and I invite you to understand that the banks are not liable for any loss of your monies if those losses are related to, they say natural disasters. There are really no more natural disasters as far as weather is concerned. And the banks know that. The banks are spending the money and paying for this. There are restrictions to their requirements to serve you as a client if it's related to a pandemic or a contagion, a variety of types of community chaos, certainly, many things. Refer to my prior video on that. I cover this in detail. In other words, your assets in your banks and even in your bank lock boxes are at risk at this point more than ever. And we're looking at a surveillance of the populace unbeknownst to people in the past. I'm mainly speaking right now to those of you that might be wanting to share this information with others that are still trying to understand the reality that they're in. Certainly, there's much deeper conversations that I have as well. But we know that there's restrictions on consumption of all resources. That is why the Rothschild LLC and companies put in worldwide electric smart meters. It's called the grid, the electric grid, that initiated out of the UK. And now also we're seeing that everyone now is receiving the wireless smart water meters. So between the smart electric, there's nothing smart. You need to understand the word play. And we will talk about the idea that our words are being changed every single day. We're having to adjust to a new definition of life and what it is to be human. And this is all anti-human. So great restrictions on energy. Again, think about how you're going to survive when you've used your allotment of electricity for the month and or water and or gas until gas is eliminated completely, because that is the goal. Also, restrictions on water use, severe restrictions on water use. What will happen as these restrictions come down on different properties, particularly if you're in the rural, the country area, that is called the WUI, W-U-I, Wildlands Urban Interface. If you are outside your city growth boundary, and you can find this out by going to your local city planning department or building department and ask them to tell you how you access a map to find out if your property is outside the city growth boundary. You will find that fire services will be limited. You won't have fire services. You'll just simply have to evacuate unless you've prepared to fight the fires on your home fronts, as many have now been doing. In fact, I want to throw this in right now as a thought. We're at war and we're the enemy and we're on a battlefield, and you have to dress in battle attire. What does that look like during a fire? That means you wear fire gear. You have fire gear. You don't walk out there with your little garden hose and try to douse and dampen your area around your homes. No, you need fire hoses. You need pumps. You need more water as the water's turned off. So prepare. Think in those terms if you want to survive and you do not want your property burned down. Now, granted, these are unusual fires because, of course, they're all ignited intentionally, and they've been heavily doused with combustible materials such as the aerosol spraying programs, which is why all of our trees are dying. They're either dead, dying, or soon to die. All of the plant material is compromised now, and so are we as humans with all of these poisons. But again, very restrictive use on land. If your water is turned off because you've used your allotment, it will be the requirement of your health department, which is also a corporation listed on Dun& Bradstreet doing business. We are now being controlled by our health departments. And they will come out if your water's turned off and deem your property uninhabitable. Code enforcement will come out and either temporarily red tag your building, your structure. Red tag means uninhabitable. And you will be forced to relocate to where you have potable water. And this would include electricity and water as well, and potentially at some point even gas. Any reason to relocate people and force mass evacuations and mass movements of society is going to and is now being used. Of course, we know that this is a reduction of population between 85 and 90%. And what we also know is that our living standards are going to be greatly reduced. We can see that occurring now.
Now,
So
Deborah, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the fires in California and, of course, fires many places around the world. And you said something very earlier that's very interesting. You said that all weather or natural disasters are no longer natural, that they are being controlled. And I'm just wondering, to what extent is this? I mean, are all hurricanes being, controlled by them? Are all earthquakes and that is natural disasters actually being triggered? Is that what you mean by that?
that's exactly what I mean. All weather is controlled. We're talking even lightning. it's all controlled. And we discuss that in many, many videos that I've done specifically in the past. And many people have documented and have noted the military weapon systems of controlling the weather. In fact, you can look at the U.S. Air Force controlling the weather by 2025, a document, but that has long since been controlled. And now what we're experiencing are attacks, not just controlled weather, attacks. So for those of you that are not noticing historical types of weather conditions that we're experiencing, not only in the United States, but worldwide, that has to be, the foundation must be your understanding that we're in a corporate government structure. We are not in a voting structure, and the Constitution is gone, and we're the enemy, and we're on our own. I would say the next important aspect is to understand the degree of the global control of worldwide weather conditions, including not just conditions from the weather per se, but also the conditions of weaponized oceans and sea, SEA. What I mean by that are the blast wave accelerators that we've covered in the past, which are the ability to create storm surge and wipe out all low-lying coastal areas. And we talk about that in many of our prior videos. This show cannot cover everything to the depth that we have in and on stopthecrime.net. So again, I don't know that I suggested, but I would recommend that everybody go to stopthecrime.net. Please subscribe to our YouTube video channel and be sure to click the bell notifications so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And we also send out email blast outs. So I certainly want to include this at this moment because I'm sending this out as an email blast out, and it hasn't gone out yet, but you all will hear this now. It is a transcribed quote from the World Economic Forum, and this is just showing 8 predictions for the world in 2030. This is only 8. Remember, there are many, many predictions and realities being created for all of us right now. And you can find much information on the World Economic Forum. I would highly recommend that all of you go to WEF.com, that's the World Economic Forum, and start going through the layers and layers and layers of special meetings that have been done very much like the meetings that we experience here at Bohemian Grove. These are meetings that are high-level meetings in Europe. And you will find out what is being planned. But here are 8 of those predictions as transcribed from the World Economic Forum. You will own nothing, and you'll be happy owning nothing. Whatever you want, you'll rent, and it will be delivered by drone. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower anymore. A handful of countries will dominate. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. We won't transplant organs. We'll print new ones instead, 3D printing. You'll eat much less meat, an occasional treat, but not a staple, for the good of our environment and our health. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. We'll have to do a better job at welcoming the integrating refugees. Now, this is very much to the complete control of the weather, and this is about creating mass displacement. And it goes on to say that polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. In other words, no more use of fossil fuels. Now keep in mind, their definition of fossil fuels is an illusion. Our petroleum never came from dead dinosaurs or fossils or plant material. Petroleum is a renewable resource, just like water is. We are not running out of water. And at this moment, I would recommend everyone go to primarywater.org, most important, and also view the video that we've had up for quite some time entitled Primary Water Explained. You will need to get to water because as blackouts continue, you will lose water connectivity in your homes if you have not made prior preparations. But as I continue with the predictions from the World Economic Forum, they say you could be preparing to go to Mars. Scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space and the start of a journey to find alien life. They go on to tell us that Western values will be tested to the breaking point. Tested to the breaking point. We're being tested right now. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. How I decipher that last checks and balances comment of the World Economic Forum is to just remember good behavior as they are molesting us and killing us and driving us into homelessness. Just remember democratic values. We are in a dictatorship. We are being run by the most evil representatives of government that we can possibly imagine. And we are losing this battle. We are losing this battle because of the divisiveness of the media and the divisiveness of this ongoing propaganda that we're pelted with every single day in the news. So speaking of the news, today is Thursday, October 29th of 2020, and why I bookmark that date is because I'm going to be covering the news that you're hearing now. And we're down the road, when you hear this information, you'll remember some of these events, and you're going to need to remember some of these events. So Donald Trump paints a apocalyptic portrait of life under Biden. That's in the news. Of course, much election discussion is in the news. Goes on to say that the economy is in the same place as the height of the Great Recession. Zeta, the storm that you've been in, Chris, Zeta, Z-E-T-A,
Yes.
leaves millions without power after slamming the Gulf Coast. Storms back to back to back this year. Weather weapons. Go on to say, hello, Anonymous. Former Homeland official reveals himself. CNN contributor lied on CNN. Again, just part of what you're hearing in the news. Consumers start second wave of hoarding. So if you're buying and trying to get supplies, you're now hoarding. And of course, we know that there are laws to prevent hoarding and to take what you have stored away, because this is a rule now called fairness and equity. There will be no haves or have-nots. I want you to think about that. This is the plan. And where you decide you're going to be as this is being rolled over you, you'll have to make some very, very big decisions about what that means for you. More and more escape, they're saying. Buyers are seeking open spaces. They're fueling housing booms in the West. They're talking about different areas that are thriving. We're certainly seeing here in Northern California a mass exodus out of San Francisco and people moving to the North Bay in the vicinity where many of us are right now. They go on to say that the FBI warns of imminent ransomware attacks on hospitals. Now that's occurring now. A number of hospitals have had attacks, cyber attacks, and their data is being held in ransom. So we've been told about this in the Rockefeller Foundation document that I discussed some months back about the increased cyber attacks, because that is now a new way in which to steal, and that is what is going to be heightened. Merkel warns against virus lies. What we're hearing now is the methods that the controllers are now implementing to stop the truth. So they're saying that people that are talking about a plandemic, their virus lies, and they're now really working to create the offensive against those conversations. They go on to tell us in what is occurring now that Europe's second surge for the virus is worse than the first. France imposes new national lockdowns. UK police to raid homes over holiday dinners. In other words, if you're not complying to the health orders, and we'll get into some specific health orders here that they are requiring in California with Thanksgiving and Christmas. But concerns about infected food imports are real, expert says. Well, we have talked about that many times over the years when we've looked at many documents that talk about the methods in which bioweaponization will occur. And it will not only be in food imports, but it will be in clothing as well. They say there's a study that 1 in 6 recovered patients from COVID still test positive. Of course, frequencies are still there. They will test positive. I was in Cuba shortly after the attack on the U.S. Embassy employees, and many of those folks, sadly, have had severe unrecoverable brain damage because of the psychotronics being used on them and the weapon systems being used on them. So they talk about, with massive exercise, Israel prepares for war on multiple fronts. Hollywood producer arrested in new sex assault cases. We're hearing that across the globe, aren't we? A variety of sex assaults. We know that it is an industry in and of itself, that the raping and profiting of organ harvesting and ritual bloodletting abusive systems is a business. It's practiced. We know that they're manufacturing adrenochrome, mailing it out, sending it out for those that can afford the increased oxygenation of the blood supply when those that are being extracted are put in severe trauma and are tortured. That's the basis of adrenochrome. And that we know that many high-ranking officials are really doing this on a very regular basis. But moving along, they say if you call 911 in this town, a drone might respond. So we have a new future of drones limiting our access to be together, which is eliminating human beings. We're being eliminated as beings. Self-driving trucks deliver food to the needy. Debt clock ticks past 27 trillion. The states face the biggest cash crisis since the Great Depression. Now, we know this to be true. We're all facing massive repairs from the weather attacks and assaults. This is war. And we know that here in Northern California, after the devastating fire of 2017, the city, and this was discovered in our newspaper, the city hired Ernst & Young to come in and help figure out new revenue schemes. Ernst & Young is and was at, it is also, they have certainly agencies all over the world, but it is a London-based accounting firm. And I have an in-depth discussion about Ernst & Young, but I will tell you a couple of the most important aspects of their creating a new revenue scheme here in Sonoma County after our fires. Now, I want you to understand this is happening in your town too. So as I refer to my town, it's our town everywhere, USA and worldwide. So Ernst & Young's revenue schemes are not only charging us tax on coral reefs that are being decimated by the poisons and toxins that are being intentionally released. This is intentional pollution. We're going to be taxed for that devastation. We're going to be taxed on water transvaporation. The farmers will be taxed on water transvaporation. What is that? That is the evaporation of the water out of the grass. They will be taxed for that wasted use of water. This is how, and one of the reasons, many reasons, that farms are being collapsed. Also because the current CEO of USA Inc. signed an executive order to implement globally GMO foods. And I don't know how many of you have ever read the book Transhumanism. I'll recommend this now. I would recommend ordering it and just scanning it. Transhumanism, it's by Joseph P. Farrell, Ferrell, and Dr. Scott D. Hart. And you will find in here many times during history that Rockefeller and Monsanto and our government teamed up to use GMO foods on certain areas. Specifically, their goal was to impose GMO foods only within the boundaries, the borders of Argentina. It's a horrific plot. They discuss it in this book, Transhumanism, which all of this kind of food transition is creating something other than humans. Of course, I will throw this in right now. We all have self-replicating plasma wires in our bodies. We have nanobots that are already in our bodies, and we are being wired up to be remotely used and destroyed and murdered. So continuing with the news and talking about Ernst & Young, one of the aspects of revenue enhancement was to charge for air. Now, you heard me. When I read that, I was in disbelief. And Chris, you heard me say that too.
I have.
And
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was really in disbelief. But that is on their list of revenue enhancements. This is charging for natural capital. Now, I disclosed all of this when I went to London and gave a talk at a convention there in London back, I think it was in 2018. Fortunately, I went to London, and because now I would not be able to go to London. Let's look at some other news, which is very important.
Deborah, before you get to that, I have a quick question for you. I see pockets of resistance at local levels, sometimes at state levels when it comes to officials. Of course, we have around the world people protesting some of these things that they see happening. Do you think that all state level officials are compromised and eventually it'll get to the local levels? Because I do, even in my own home state, I have pockets of resistance with local officials, even at the state level somewhat. But at what point do you think they're all going to be compromised, or do you think we have a chance to fight it if we keep kind of pushing at these local levels?
No, all the local agencies are all corporations, and they're on autopilot with rolling out United Nations policies and bankers' policies. And you can see this. It's evidenced by the fact that climate action plans and sustainable development goals have all been implemented and adopted in your cities. In fact, what I did was, and you can do this too, you can take this example if you'd like. I typed in Santa Rosa, California, Climate Action Plan. And it's a couple 100-page document. And the first page is how the U.S. Department of Defense is claiming that they're not liable for any acts under this plan. And then it talks about the local government officials that approved this plan, and you will find names. Now, answering your question, are they all compromised? No. There are a lot of very good people that run for office unaware that it's a corporate structure that they're getting involved in. I have seen good intentions before at meetings that I have personally attended, where one city council member, for example, found out about ICLEI, International Council for Environmental Initiatives, and did not want that city to pay the annual fee to continue with those goals, which are all sustainable development goals, to eliminate and create equalized equity throughout. In other words, no haves or have-nots. This man was supported by probably 50 people that joined in the chambers that night a few years ago to support his endeavor to get the other council members to not extend this ICLEI, United Nations Agreement. And he was outweighed. Now, we have seen the attempts of other good people attempt to do other things. For example, during this election, this false election cycle that we're in right now, I've been hearing on my radio, as many of you are too, a lot of local races, local people wanting to be on a city council, for example. And I recently heard a very interesting platform that someone that's trying to be on a city council here in Sonoma County, they said that they want better communication and clarity because they feel that they're not being heard. Well, you and they are not being heard. They just do not understand the organization around the controlling of meetings. So if you get on a city council, for example, these meeting agendas are already predetermined. You're needing to vote. Your county officials, those that put these agendas together, are making recommendations. Your entire city is rolling on autopilot of implementing all of these goals. When I will go, say, for example, when I did, before all the meetings were closed, and they're all on Zoom, and I can understand why. They're really understanding the increased anger of the citizenry. And in January, when I attended a county board of supervisors meeting, one of the supervisors said, as a result of approving a new septic requirement on river properties, which would end the ability for people to maintain ownership of their properties because they could no longer be compliant with the new waste disposal requirements coming down from the state and the federal government. This is how they're taking land away, many, many ways. But the board approved this plan. And they said, if people knew what we were doing, it's not our fault, we're being told we have to do this. But if they knew what we were doing, they would come down with pitchforks to the County Board of Supervisors offices. Now, if you go on to stopthecrime.net, to our YouTube video channel, you will see my husband and I filming the increased security that was being implemented towards the end of 2019, when the cities were becoming very much aware that they were imposing draconian regulations on the people. And this was one way that COVID has gained a greater force, because people aren't attending meetings anymore. When I attended meetings, I used to film them and put them up on YouTube, so all of you would see how these meetings were going, and I would explain and describe in 2 or 3 minutes whatever the allotted time I was given. So now that is no more, at least here in Sonoma County. They're not having any more meetings in government buildings because of COVID. So moving ahead with some of these news items, the Forest Service can't afford prevention efforts. So what are they saying? This is regarding wildfires. And they're saying that the president has urged management of the woodlands, but the national agency is hampered by monetary cuts. In other words, they won't be able to manage the forest. Now, keep in mind, the people that were to save the environment and the endangered species, that was set up, that needed to be set up in advance of the process of the takedown and the control and moving us out of the wildlands project. That was out of the wildlands area. Now, for those of you, just a brief description on what the wildlands area is, or also now called the WUI, change of words. Again, most important to understand that the wildlands project, there's a map, and the map shows where human access is denied. And it's mandated by the United Nations Biodiversity Treaty, which is forced transformation and relocation of all citizens and cities included to comply with environmental policies and reduction of CO2 emissions. Now, I want to, the map will show, and I have it on stopthecrime.net. You can just type in our search, wildlands map. And it's important to know that we have been seeing for years that U.S. roads and highway infrastructure has not been maintained. Well, it hasn't been maintained because we're not going to need to drive. We're being now locked down in our homes, and cars are being abandoned. We will not have transportation unless it is by electric vehicle and with lithium-ion batteries that explode. In fact, right now, just to make a note, lithium-ion batteries explode and they degrade very rapidly, and that's all part of much of the new types of electric equipment, and also with the battery backup storage for solar. Understand that these batteries must not be installed. The government is requiring this. In fact, most of your solar contractors get licensed by the government's criteria of deploying lithium-ion batteries. And you can type in lithium-ion batteries and explosions, and you'll find too that there were recent large recalls of a variety of electric auto cars because the batteries are exploding. This was just in the news in the last week or so. So you've got to get to silicon gel batteries, and they're hard to get in the United States. So moving on to the Wildlands Project, for those of you that are unaware, that's why I recommended you go to your building or planning department and find out if you are in the WUI, the Wildlands Urban Interface, where human access is being denied now on a rapid basis because we're being burned out, flooded out, hurricaned out, tornadoed out, and heavily chemtrailed out with high combustibles and other illnesses, and ways in which we're being threaded throughout this country with frequencies, with cell phone towers, all posing as communication devices for our benefit when these are military assault devices being rolled out upon us. Our cell phones, too, I'll just throw in, have always been weapons. I have a video up called Cooking of Humanity. I would recommend you watch that. But again, the roads and infrastructure in the United States has not been maintained. That is why much of our infrastructure is failing now under these new climate change weather events, they're calling it. But these are weather war. This is the ability to use the climate to literally dismantle all prior infrastructure. Again, in the Wildlands Urban Interface, it's important to know that there are core reserves and corridors with little to no human access allowed. There are buffered zones that they're calling highly regulated use, and there will be a few areas where humans are allowed. Again, humans, they're not using the word human beings. We're human beings. We're not humans. We're human beings. But they go on to say that even Indian reservations and military reservations, it's very interesting to see this map, and I would recommend that everybody take a look at this. It's important to know, and I was on a radio show with Dr. Stan Monteith with Radio Liberty for a number of years out of Santa Cruz in California. And for those of you that don't know Dr. Stan Monteith, he was a great, great man. And he died back in 2014. And he always opened up his show by saying this, and this applies to all of us right now: bringing you the story behind the story, the news behind the news, hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at and illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the civilization of all worldwide people, it will be reality, not illusion or delusion, that will determine what the future will bring. So for those of you that have been heavily mind controlled, you're voting. For those of you that have not, you realize that you're on your own and that no one is going to save you, and that we are in a corporate government agency system and network of corporations that run the United States and the world. We're USA Inc., and we are Earth Inc. So again, to measure the level of mind control, look at where you are. If you are following the speak of the voting, if you do believe that all you have to do is put someone else in power that will change your lives, you're already mind controlled. That's a way in which you can use that as a barometer for yourselves. And without apologies, that's one way in which you learn this.
Well, that's
so
very
again,
well said.
Yeah, the Forest Service can't afford prevention efforts. Of course, the Forest Service cannot afford prevention efforts. They are very much aware that many decades of heavy spraying of heavy metals through the aerosol spraying program have rendered the forest in such a state of death that either plant material and trees are dead, standing dead, highly combustible, soon to die, and dying. That is the condition of our forest worldwide. Nature is being destroyed. And of course, we're being blamed for all of this. Also, we're seeing on some of the headlines that Russia is seen as a greater threat. Well, we're always having those games played when certainly our governments are working together. And I want to also point out that there are massive increased lockdowns worldwide now. We're seeing that France and Germany are on increased lockdowns. And I just posted a video on stopthecrime.net in the last day or so, went over some of the draconian lockdown requirements in other small countries that you're not hearing about. And you need to hear about this. Our media will not tell us because our media wants you to think that you can vote and that all will be well and we won't have this kind of lockdown. We're going to have a horrific lockdown in this country. We're being set up for that right now through the increased weather assaults that we're all experiencing, that we're being told as a result of towns being decimated by fires or floods, that people are going to family and friends, and we're spreading COVID that way. And they're saying that we have spikes here. My local newspaper is saying that the senior care facilities are in absolute dire straits, that is where most of the people are dying here. Well, of course, they're wireless, they're eating Illuminati food, massively poisoned food. If you go into a care facility, you'll oftentimes see what I mean. And it's wireless. Everyone's on cell phones. There's Wi-Fi. There's all that connectivity for the enjoyment of being a senior, which is a slow death system. And we've also spoken about many of the illnesses that people are getting as a result of exposure of frequencies. So you don't put your loved ones into facilities of death. You just don't do that. And Alzheimer's, of course, is on the increase because of the heavy aluminum, not only in our food supplies and in the overhead aerial assault programs, but that's also another weapon to take us out so we cannot think. Now, I want to go over this because this was a part of the beginning of my journey with the context of chemical and biological weapons and the use of that. I received an email some years ago from a retired neurologist friend of ours, and it was just a little over a paragraph, and I was shocked. I really just could not believe this to be the case. I'm going to read you this paragraph right now that caused my husband and I to board a plane and fly to Washington, D.C. and go to the records department because we told our family, if this is in fact legitimate, we felt it was, but it was shocking and we wanted to see for ourselves, that life will have changed for us forever. The understanding of betrayal and deception in this country hit home during this period of time for us. And then it became easy to see and understand the policies when you know that you're the enemy on a battlefield and they want you dead. So here's this paragraph. Public Law 95-49, Title 50, Chapter 32, Section 1520, entitled Chemical and Biological Warfare Program. The use of human subjects will be allowed for the testing of chemical and biological agents by the U.S. Department of Defense. Accounting to congressional committees. We're talking congressional committees. Again, our government is a corporate structure controlled by the international bankers. So they said the U.S. Defense, according to, gave the ability for the congressional committees with respect to the experiments and studies. The Secretary of Defense may conduct tests and experiments involving the use of chemical and biological warfare agents on civilian populations within the United States. So that certainly underscored for me why they were spraying with black helicopters in the 90s over Pasadena in Southern California, where the famous Rose Bowl parade is held, or was held every year, with malathion. They were claiming that there was a citrus fly that needed to be exterminated. They were spraying the residents in Pasadena in California with malathion. So we went to Washington, D.C. We asked for this public law, and we were given about a 2-inch thick document containing all this information. So that was part of the journey for me to sever from the illusion and my false education about the branches of government and how we function and operate. We don't operate that way. And that was the process that it took me through. All of you have little time. You don't have the amount of time that I had to understand and learn all this. You need to know what you don't know, and you need to know and learn this now, because your very lives are at stake. What is now occurring is in matters of days instead of months or years now. This is happening very, very quickly. What is this that's happening? The massive reduction of the population. We know that the Deagle document tells us about it's a document that is mind-blowing in the sense that it's a real intelligence organization for the U.S. government, and it predicts massive depopulation. About 80% of us will be gone by the year 2025. And you can see that happening right now. You can see it through this pandemic. You can see it through the increased weaponization and assaults that we're being hit with weather weapons. And you can see it with all of the suffering and lack of joy and happiness that people are experiencing because of being pelted continuously by the media that is continuously creating angst and sadness for all of us. So you can go to Deagle, D-E-A-G-E-L. I've also covered this in many talks that I've given. You can certainly go back, and I would recommend that you do listen to our videos. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a flyover and then get into a little more detail. When I mean a flyover, I'm going to have all of you envision that you're flying above the globe, wherever you want to envision this, over the United States, the whole Western Hemisphere, over Europe, the Asian countries, all the islands, wherever you are flying overhead and looking down below. This is what you face, and I'm going to attempt to sum this up. All of our coastlines are under siege. I've discussed this in an initial video I posted called Coastlines Under Attack. All branches of the military are engaged in shore erosion and in flooding. And what you're seeing in many of these hurricanes, particularly in the Mississippi region, is the ability now to create storm surge, so that when they dump, new word, an atmospheric river overhead, that's a new word now for clouds that just seem to dump water on you, that they've created. But when you have an atmospheric river or a weather condition created that has so much water and the ability to increase the tide at the exits of all the rivers, you have severe backup of rivers that cannot exit into the oceans. and then it floods, and then that's why you're seeing a lot of levees being breached in the Louisiana area right now from Hurricane Zeta. In fact, flooding and fires are the two main goals in weather attacks, flooding and fires. And of course, pestilence as well, and we'll go over that in a minute too, bioweaponization of insects. In fact, we now have a killer situation in Oregon that was found. It's I want to say, gosh, it's not a bee, but it's killing the bees. Can't think of what it is right now. But I wanted to point out, again, you're on your flyover, you're looking down. You could type in planned retreat to see exactly what I'm saying right now. Planned retreat, coastlines, that's what I would type in. And you will find that worldwide, planned retreat has been implemented. From moving military operations to higher ground, from moving villages in Africa and in the United States, and relocating people in Wales. This is happening as we speak, worldwide in all low coastline areas. So you're flying overhead, the coastlines are being planned to be retreated at the cost of the people that are required to retreat. What do I mean by that? They're needing to demolish all of their structures before they retreat, as to not increase pollution along the coastlines. Then you're noticing weather assaults just everywhere, different types of weather events occurring. You are noticing that wastewater treatment plants that are now being constructed under an executive order to provide water, alternative reuse water for all of us worldwide, because of the illusion of running out of water. So you're going to look at all these wastewater treatment plants that are serving up toxic human waste, including pharmaceuticals of undetermined consequences, served up to our municipal water supplies. That is an executive order that we're being told, because of climate change and increased drought conditions, we have to re-drink our water. They're calling it new water and reuse water. Be very careful with that. Also, they're blending wastewater treatment plant fecal, and it's called toilet to tap is what it is. And they're even blending that in upstreams and mixing it into the reservoirs. So as the reservoirs collect certainly toxins that flow over all the land, collecting the chemicals and all of the toxic fertilizers, all of the airborne poisons from the chemtrails and the radiation in Fukushima and everything else is mixed in to these reservoirs. And then, of course, added fluoride and chlorine and many other toxins, and then pumped into your home for you to bathe, shower, and drink. So it's no wonder that we are very sick and compromised, and most people at a variety of different levels have chemical lobotomies. We're unable to function. We're unable to act in the jaws of danger that we now face. We are in immense danger, and we're not responding. And Chris, you were asking that you're seeing pockets of pushback, and we're seeing people protesting. Well, I can assure you that identifications are being taken. We just learned that the FBI has special planes that they fly over different groups that are protesting, and they can literally ping off of cell phones, and also because of now advanced facial recognition, track and monitor all the people that are opposing the obedience that's required, under this oppressive regime called Earth Inc. And so these people will be identified. Their social credit score will certainly take that into consideration when they are dispersed food. If you don't have a COVID pass, you will not be able to go to the store. So you're flying overhead. You're not seeing all of this maybe from the ground unless you have the high-tech visible types of technologies that you can see shoelaces from, thousands of feet above the ground. But you're flying overhead, you're seeing the coastlines under attack, you're seeing all the weather weapons being used worldwide in a variety of ways, you're seeing rivers and other areas evaporating and disappearing, you're seeing lakes disappear through evaporation and sending that water and dumping it and flooding out other areas. The movement of water is unbelievable. In fact, for those of you, if you have not seen What in the World Are They Spraying, it's a video, YouTube. What in the world are they spraying and why in the world are they spraying? I'm wondering why you haven't seen those, because you will learn that there were technologies available many years ago where they could pull the rain back up as it was falling when it was only 4 feet from the ground. So that is the level of control of the weather. Make absolutely no mistake. So our entire infrastructure worldwide is under attack. And you're flying overhead and you're trying to figure out, well, where can I move? Where will I be safe? Well, I can tell you, I know many people that are moving to third world countries, very unsafe. They're already dictatorships. They're already run by the IMF. South America, many people believe that Ecuador is a safe place, Costa Rica, etc. Type in coastlines under attack and forced and planned retreat, followed by Costa Rica. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of low-lying area around Costa Rica. But having said that, you're just looking at the control of those that have had the technologies for total oppression. This is also often referred to as totalitarian through technocracy, words that most people don't even understand. So if you just think of it in terms of technologies and total control, and it's a system, and we can see it now, it does not recognize any limits to its authority. We're seeing that happening right now. And these undefined limits and no limits at all, their goal is to regulate all aspects of public and private life without regard for life. Without regard for life. We're seeing that. This technology, this system of total oppression controls all the media, all the politics, the economies, the speech, engages in widespread use of terror. We're seeing all of this, and mass surveillance. And these regimes stay in political power through all-encompassing propaganda campaigns. So if you're reading your newspapers, you have to understand that you're reading the propaganda. You need to look at the backstory. I take a newspaper because I can see the backstory. I recently heard on a traffic report here in Northern California, and this is most important for me to share with all of you because I had never heard this before, and it's startling because we know that communication is being severed worldwide, and according to the documents, we won't have communication before long. In other words, Chris, our ability to share this right now won't be happening. We're seeing channels being taken down. We're seeing this. But let me talk about what I heard on my traffic report. This was astounding. And then I looked into it. They said that there was a delayed traffic in this certain area here in Sonoma County, so to avoid that area. And they said that there were, and they weren't clear, they said that it looked like perhaps that a truck had dropped or spilled off the truck radio attenuators, and or that they were putting them in, and that was why the traffic was being stalled. But either way, whether they fell off of a truck or were being deployed, here's what a radio attenuator is. It is a resistive device that reduces the amplitude of a signal. In other words, it reduces the power of a transmission. It's used for the reduction in the strength of a signal. I hope you're hearing this. Your corporate government structure, your telecom industry is reducing your connectivity by deploying radio attenuators in your towns now. So you will not be able to communicate. We learned a while ago that the Cal Fire here in California was removing all the transponders for the radio devices. And so they are preparing to cut us off. In the Rockefeller Foundation document, as we are cut off, flooded out, burned out, and forcibly relocated, and then the ultimate hits. You're flying overhead, you're looking down at the earth, wherever you're looking down, and there's no light. The grid is going down. They're taking the grid down intentionally. The grid, the electric power grid, is considered the world's largest machine. All life as we have built for our existence now is dependent on the grid. You take the grid down and you take life back to pre-industrial times. Now, that's also the goal of the Climate Action Plan, the Paris Climate Accords. You can type in, it'll say pre-industrial time. Paris Peace Accord, type in pre-industrial. They're saying that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions back to a little above the year 1750. That's 1750. Now, many of you will say, well, I'm off the grid. I can live similarly to those conditions. I can tell you, you cannot. And the reason you cannot is because of the technology now that is used in satellite formats and sensor formats that do not require electricity. They all are continuously capable of being overhead and disabling people by being able to search and find and locate people wherever they are and recharge through solar capabilities now. And so we're in really very much what the Hunger Games showed. It showed people in severe austerity living in those camps and being very hungry. The reduction of food, we're only going to be given enough caloric intake for our vital human needs. Now, who decides on our vital human needs? Well, I'll give you a bit of a definition on that. The reduction of food is going to reduce your ability to be combative because you simply will not have enough energy, along with increased fluorides and other heavy assaults that we will be having to endure. So part of your social credit score is going to eliminate your ability to get enough caloric intake. Be very much aware of that. This is equalizing the food supply and killing millions and millions of people in a variety of ways. So I talked about the radio attenuators being deployed and the fact that I just heard about this in a traffic congestive situation, to me was phenomenal. You all now need to watch out for radio attenuators being deployed in your area to reduce the signal and the strength of your radio connectivity. Okay, this is pretty much hot off the press. Let's talk about Dark Winter, because we certainly heard in the recent presidential comedy show both sides talking about Dark Winter. Let's talk about what that is. It's a bioterrorism exercise, and it's a looming threat of bioterrorism, which is what we face in many instances already and have. I told you about giving authority to the Department of Defense to conduct chemical and biological warfare on the American people without our knowledge or consent. So now here we had a Dark Winter exercise. It was the first of its kind, and this was conducted back in 2001. Did you know about this bioterrorism exercise?
I have heard about this, yes.
Yeah, and many people haven't, Chris, but it's bioweaponization of infectious diseases, public health issues, and what we might face in the 21st century. No. We've been facing it well before the 21st century, and exercising is now over. There is a deliberate intention to disable us in a variety of ways, and it is a deliberate attack. And they tell us in the Dark Winter documents that they must find out who's responsible for this attack, and is the nation at war? Of course, this is a bioweapon system. And they discuss it as being a tabletop exercise. So what is a tabletop exercise? Dark Winter, a tabletop exercise? It is disaster preparedness activities that takes participants through the process of dealing with a simulated disaster. Now, they're planning these disasters. We're already in these disasters, and we've had many attacks over the years, many attacks of bioweaponization. So when you look at Dark Winter, you need to understand this is a biological weapons attack. It's predicated upon the smallpox and how this could be spread throughout our communities rapidly. And Johns Hopkins is involved in this simulation that's going to work itself out into actuality, which it has. But back in 2001, Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Strategies was involved in this, and in collaboration with the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the Analytic Services Institute for Homeland Security and the Oklahoma National Memorial Institute for the Prevention of Terrorism. And they held senior level exercises entitled Dark Winter, which is a simulated covert, in this instance, a smallpox attack on the United States. And I cover that in greater detail in the video I just posted. It's entitled Dark Winter and Black Skies, I think is what I called it. In any event, you need to understand what you face. You need to work on your health in every way possible. I've been told by many people, and you can examine this for yourself, that we must mineralize our water. So look that up for yourselves. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything, but this has been highly recommended by many people that I know that sadly we have not been taught to look at mineralizing our water. So I guess I'm going to go over some other aspects of what we face. And
now,
what
Deborah, before we go any further, I just want to let you know we have about 15 minutes left or so. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on time. But when you look at all the information that you're presenting, and you look back at the researchers and people that have warned us of these exact things happening, 2020 was the year, and it just all started rolling out. And if what you say is true, that it's not years or months that we have. I think it's very important that people also know what is the first things that they should do to start getting ready for this as well.
Well, good question. Certainly have much more to impart, but let's hit that now for the finale of this conversation, Chris. That's a good question. Thank you for bringing that back.
Of course.
So for all of you, this is mind-blowing, perhaps, frightening. And I've talked about workarounds. So let's talk about workarounds. You are not going to be able to very soon go to the market unless you have a COVID card. You're not going to be able to go to the doctor. You're not going to be able to go to most any place without showing a COVID card, meaning that you have been tested. The testing in and of itself is deadly. There's hydrogel on these bristle brushes that they ram up and breach the blood-brain barrier. People have died by having the COVID test, and many people have suffered bleeding out of the nose after the COVID test. This is breaching in the possibility of breaching the blood-brain barrier with hydrogel on the bristles. Now, I won't go into a great deal about hydrogel other than that it replicates in the body. It's a gel, and it literally fills up the internal areas of your body and shuts your organs down, eliminating oxygen, etc. That's just a very brief description of hydrogel. That's on all the COVID tests, I should say, on the majority of COVID tests with the bristles being rammed up into your nose. There are alternative COVID testings if those of you believe you need to be tested for COVID. But having said that, think about right now, if you need to go to the dentist, you should, because right now you don't need to have a COVID pass. Anything at all, getting your eyeglass prescriptions renewed, get them done now. We're finding supply lines are being cut, and it's becoming more difficult to get things ordered. Eyeglasses and eyewear, depending on frames you choose and the kinds of lenses you need, are now being slowed down due to the supply lines and the reduced workforce that's out there creating the kinds of things that we had readily accessible abilities for in the past. So anything at all that you need, again, the eyewear, I would also recommend while you're looking at eyewear that you have the blue tech lenses inserted into prescription glasses, and or you can order blue tech lenses or blue tech eyewear on Amazon if you don't have prescription lenses, but you can even get them to fit over your glasses. What is that? That protects you from all of the LED lights and all of the lighting from your laptops, your iPhones, and the lights that they're now deploying in the cities that are also used as weapons, and the lights on many headlights now of cars. The Department of Energy has required this type of new lighting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Also, if you have had your home destroyed, be certain that you consider the types of requirements of new windows. The Department of Energy is requiring these windows that are rated for reduced climate. In other words, they are presumably going to create a better, an ability to eliminate the loss of energy within your home. But some of these windows start fires, and I go over this in great detail. Just know that there have been a number of fires here in Northern California started because of the new energy efficient windows that have been installed after people have lost their homes. The windows on the west side of the homes where the sun is the hottest in the day, the windows convex, creating a magnifying glass effect, and it burns whatever that magnifying effect is hitting, your neighbor's home, your fence, your neighbor's parked car, wherever that is being directed. Fires have started, and fire captains and fire teams that go out don't recognize this as being a combustible nature of windows. The only area that we have found that discloses these windows as a problem is the Trex wood material that you can buy for decks when you replace decks, or certainly use Trex. On deck material, it says do not use Trex in these window conditions, because even patio furniture is burned up. So watch out for the window replacements, watch out for the COVID tests. In short, you need to plan to be able to stay on your property indefinitely without going to the market. So I want you to think about what that might entail, because certainly we're seeing this occurring now on a broader basis worldwide with 2-week required stay-at-home orders. Well, they're setting up the conditions now of your ability to leave your homes, and you will be required to have the deadly COVID test along with the vaccination. That's what all of this is about, or not all of it, but much of it is about. So be thinking about surviving on your home within your community. Create, if possible, a 20-mile radius around your home of people that you might be able to trade with, an underground network of such, where if someone is growing certain aspects of food, think about a greenhouse. Think about getting a greenhouse. Certainly consider securing your water. You want to go to primarywater.org, and if you're out in the country on a well, you certainly do not want your county to put a meter on your well. At all cost, do not allow a meter on your well. And look into potentially drilling and getting to primary water. Sadly, our well drilling teams in the United States and worldwide have not been taught how to drill for water. Just like dentists always filled our cavities with aluminum, not aluminum, whatever mercury
Yes.
fillings. So dentists always did that until they found out it was killing us. It was also a conductor for frequencies, and many of you can feel the frequencies going in through your dental cavities, which is dispersing the mercury in your body. So if you have time and you have a little bit of money, certainly consider getting that mercury out of your teeth. You have to go to a special dentist to do that, but we would recommend that you consider this. Many people now are doing heavy metal detox under the supervision of people that understand how to do that. This will help to eliminate the connectivity that your bodies have already absorbed with the heavy metals from all of the food, water, and spraying programs, because we're literally antennas now. We're walking antennas. So you can reduce some of that interference and some of the assaults on your body by doing some heavy metal detox. Certainly look at mineralizing your water. Again, when I said to consider not having to leave your home, that would include the following. There's going to be large-scale, lengthy power outages. I've put out many warnings about this. The grid, the power grid, the electric power grid worldwide is run by the bankers, and they are going to take it down. We're seeing it being taken down. They create these weaponized weather events, and how many hundreds of thousands of people are out of power in the Louisiana area right now? Hundreds of thousands of people are without power. We've had the same ongoing power outages here in California due to the fires. In fact, they're turning off the power prior to creating the weaponized ability to start the fire in the first place. And power outages are occurring everywhere, all over the world. You can just type in power outages, worldwide locations, and you'll see that's ongoing. The grid is going to go down. So what is that going to look like where you live? Are you in a high-dense city area where grid failures would lead in mass rioting? That always occurs when the grid is down. Massive rioting. Or are you going to be prepared when the grid goes down to have water? Because that's one of the first things that you do not have the ability to access is water. So you've got to have water storage. Get to primary water if you're able, but otherwise get water on board to last for months. And if you're able and you can afford some type of a generator for backup power just to keep some refrigeration going, consider that, but understand, again, all petroleum-based products are going to be eliminated. So the generators will serve you for a while. But why I say that, here in California, the San Francisco Air Quality Management has said that running of generators during power outages and fire events is too much of a pollutant and increasing our greenhouse gas emissions. And that is the inability in the future to not be able to access the very fuels necessary to run your generators with. So be looking at how you stay at home, how you go to the store less. Do not go to stores a siege, those who become hot spots. What do I mean a siege? I'm talking about as we watch the economy fail as well, which it is, we're seeing many of our local country banks closing up. And I don't mean small banks. I'm talking Wells Fargo. I'm talking Bank of America. They're all converging into and within the city growth boundaries. So all the smaller little banks that we had in the country, they're gone. They're closed up, permanently closed up. Those buildings are empty. And now we're forced to go into a centralized bank in the heart of the city, stand in lines because of COVID, with increased surveillance, and police hired security now at these banks because they're getting ready to collapse our monetary system as well. So right now, many people are suggesting that whatever cash you may have, transition that into survival needs. We need anything at all that you can survive with. I highly recommend a book that some of us have referred to. There are many books, but one book is entitled How to Survive the End of the World as We Have Known It. Again, How to Survive the End of the World as We Have Known It. Tactics, Techniques, and Technologies for uncertain times. We're in these times. And this is by James Rawles, Rawles. And I would highly recommend that you take a look at that. There's also another book by James Rawles called Tools for Survival. Again, just one of many suggestions, but I would certainly start understanding you are on your own. No one is going to save you. It does not matter who wins these elections. We have all lost, no matter what side you believe you're on. Remember, politics is the entertainment division for those that control us. It is entertainment. It is an illusion. We no longer have a government that we have been mind controlled to believe we have. It's over. It has been over. And I liken it to fishing. When you pull a fish on deck and it flops around for a while, it's not in water, but it's still alive. It's flopping around for a while. That's us. We've been caught. We're on the deck. We're flopping around. And the gaff is going to come. The gaff. Skewering that fish, killing it. So this is where we are. We are on our own. And your survivability is going to depend on what you understand your reality to be. People will ask me all the time, Chris, what should we do? And I've attempted right now to give people ideas on what they can do, but their level of understanding and doing those things is only going to be dependent on what they understand the problem to be. So if you can just understand you're the enemy, you're on a battlefield, and you're set to be exterminated, and your food supply is being reduced, your ability to access all resources is being reduced, and if you live anywhere below grade of a wastewater treatment plant or a reservoir, you're going to be flooded out because all of the infrastructure that was built 50 years plus ago is going to now be targeted. These are now weapon systems. Do not use lithium-ion batteries. I suggested that earlier in the show. Look at getting silicon salt batteries. If you're able to have battery backup and solar, that's good, but be certain that you locate the silicon gel batteries. Again, they're tough to get, but they can be gotten. And start doing that now. Do not wait. Supply lines are being cut. Go to your doctors, get your glasses, help others in your family to understand what they must do, band together, certainly looking at getting seeds that you can sprout, because when you're in the increasing stress load that we're going to be faced with as food supply are being cut and food calories are being distributed for only what is for vital needs for survival, you're going to need better quality food than a lot of these military dried food storage abilities have and will provide for you. You're going to need greens, and so sprouting will become a possibility for many people. Even if you live in the city, you can sprout on your kitchen table. You can have a variety of sproutables, but understand those are now becoming difficult to acquire as well. So I can only say that the threat we face is unthinkable. At times, it's hard to even hear what I'm saying and believing that this is really our reality, because it is. And I know I struggle with the documents that I have gone over for so many years. And as I also said, you don't have time to spend the kind of time I did on understanding our reality. That's why go to stopthecrime.net, go to our YouTube video page, because the videos on our channel that we post are basically in many ways cliff notes for a lot of the information and documents that we have on our website. And one more thing, we are now all becoming very targeted with frequency assaults and weather assaults from satellites and boots on the ground, gang stalkers, and handheld equipment that is injuring many, many people, torturing many millions of people worldwide, called the targeted individual community. We're all now being targeted. There's just different levels of being targeted. Have compassion for one another as we move forward, because we will need compassion. We will need to live in right conduct, because people will be hungry. People will not be able to pay for their apartments or the mortgages on their homes. We're going to experience massive, massive homelessness. If what you think you're seeing now on the streets is massive displacement, you haven't seen anything yet. Because during COVID, landlords had moratoriums on being able to collect rent. Well, that expires the end of the year, or I think by January of 2021. That all expires. We're going to see corporate held and owned apartment buildings that are owned by the banks, literally evicting people by the droves. We're going to see lots of people thrown out onto the streets or living in their cars. We also recently learned that the flu shots are being highly recommended. Certainly, some friends of mine in Ireland warned about the fact that they're trying to advance flu shots for children. There's a fire department in Texas here in the United States that is giving flu shots to homeless and people that live in their cars, and predominantly looking at vaccinating children. These are all weaponized injections. Just look at some of the work that Dr. Mulder out of Canada discussed. You can go and watch Tolerance Lost. It's a 3-part video YouTube series, Tolerance Lost. Understand, since the very time we were jabbed with anything, we've been being stroked out. So avoid that, the vaccination protocols, because that's all part of a genocide plan, as you know. And harden up and try to listen to shows like this as long as you can to understand you are not alone. You're not alone. I'm sitting up here in Northern California, and we have been inundated. I have friends all over the world, in Australia, all over the world, that I'm getting communications from of their desperate moments that they're living in. We are not alone, and know that, but take action. Don't just listen to these kinds of programs and hear this kind of information and sit there. Your inaction is your consent to what you will personally suffer. And you cannot blame anyone else at this point, because there has been much opportunity. I mean, I'm looking at what we were told back in 1972. And here's an example, and then I'm getting ready to wrap this up. But it said, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, therefore contributes to social injustice. And this was a report from the United Nations Habitat Conference in 1976. So we have been told even long before that. The Great Reset that you're hearing about is happening, and it is eliminating people and controlling all assets and resources worldwide. Eliminating transportation. It is all of the things that many cities have now adopted, called climate emergency resolutions. Type that in your search bar, climate emergency resolutions. You will find a list of the most urgent requirements that your city must adopt right now, and that includes reducing travel. Everybody must live within the city growth boundary, but not everybody, because most people sadly won't survive that transition. The Deagle.com website talks about the ways in which the majority of people will be murdered, and they will literally commit suicide as a result of massive displacement and forced relocation. Because emotionally, there's such a sorrow in this country, So I can say again, love the ones you love the most even more. Make amends to people that you need to make amends to for any misgivings that might exist. Try to settle out some of those things so that you'll feel better, so that you can go forward in right conduct every single day and always, always do the next best right thing. And that would be to prepare right now so that your lack of preparedness is not impacting those that have prepared. There will be those that will survive a little longer than the millions that have been unable to prepare or have not understood what is happening. They see things that are happening, but they're not looking into it further, and they're not listening to this program and other programs. So with that, Chris, I just really want to thank you for this time. And I'll look forward to talking with you more in depth about who NASA really is. It's not the organization that we thought. And NASA was really the beginning of the introduction of climate change.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to talk about that again, and I would love to have you on after the elections to get another update.
That would be wonderful. So thank you for everyone that's listening. Prepare. That is what you must do now. Just prepare mentally and physically and with supplies that you'll need. Do all that you can immediately. Prepare now. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Deborah. And for everyone else, until next time, you have a great evening. And Deborah, you have a great evening. Thank you for coming on again.